Hey, the Rulers DMO73 here, bringing you one last feature match before the end of the year, mainly showcasing off how Arc works against Robert and his Brad list. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now offering our 2024 Quarter 1 circuit kits, and our guest lecturer members, Fight Ramen. Class is in session. So here you have it, the showdown between Big Boy Arc with me on the right versus Robert. Just a reminder before we get into it though, that Odyssey Games does have their pre-orders up for Pilgrim Memories. You are not going to want to miss this set. It's going to be absolutely insane, and it's just going to have a lot of really cool cards that are really going to shake things up and bring back a lot of cool support for the Grim Cluster rulers. So be sure to get your pre-orders for that. And then we have Robert brought Brad to the table this time, not a Killua into Brad, but he is kind of using base Brad along with the Brad and Killua Resonator, so starting as Brad as opposed to the Bradlua, but just kind of wanted to show you a little bit about how Arc plays here, so thankful to Robert for being willing to sit down and kind of show off the deck a little bit. So Arc, as you know, is going to be chucking his stones into the RFG, and then kind of playing a lot of replicants and going from there. You'll see that's why I have the stone where it is, just because he starts the game with that stone in the RFG. So we shuffled the other stones and then kind of kept that one on top, because there's no way to cancel that trigger. It's just as the game starts. You see we do have also Arc Gear Grails there sitting in the sideboard, as well as Replicant Shiva, because those will also be cards that we will be trying to make use of as Arc. Against a control deck, the Grail is particularly good, just because it makes those stones not feel as good there. So Arc Grail Gears, it doesn't really matter to Arc because he's just sacking stones from the RFG. He doesn't really need to tap them, but it does slow the other deck down. So Gears Satellite, that's our first stone. We are going first, so that's going to come into the play. We immediately going to tap and sack it and generate a Gears token, as well as get the top stone removed from the game. So we have two will to kind of, or we have one stone to kind of work with there, and then just to pass. Grail Arc surprisingly does like to go second, so that it has access to two stones on its turn one, because you can call stone to match your opponent's stone and then also get the stone off of the satellite, but it doesn't particularly hurt it too much to go first. It just has to be a little bit more patient. You do see a first turn judgment from the Brad from Robert, keeping the will coin there, getting a knowledge counter, then a pass probably coming down the pike there. Now, a big thing for Arc is that the more satellites he has, the more just like 2/2s are going to get put onto the field every turn. So eventually you just get to kind of grind out the opponent with the 2/2s and kind of overwhelm them, because they're just free bodies every single turn. Once again, we're getting another stone there from the satellite. Call stone, match the one stone. Now we have 3 that we can work with. I'll go grab the other token here in just a second, because it's every single time you crack and sack the stone. We're going to swing in for 2 with the one that can attack, go down to 38, and then we're going to immediately banish both tokens to RFG the top 2 cards of my deck from the game. This is helpful just to be able to set up things like Cascade, which you'll notice I'm going to go ahead and cast here by tucking a stone back on the bottom of the deck. RFG is another card from the top of my deck. Now we can cast Gears and Replicants by tucking stuff back. So things like you saw those King's Hopeless Screams, those count as Gears because they have the Gear subtyping. So it's really nice to be able to control early boards, as well as keep the hand filled there for Arc. Now down comes this Guardian Dragon. So this is kind of an advantage for Arc. I'm not going to try to cancel this card because it's going to generate another stone. It's only going to be able to recover one of them, so it's not really generating a lot of value. But we are going to go ahead and use Chivalry's Tears to try to kill the dragon before we get access to being above the killable range of Chivalry's Tears. This also puts another card in our RFG, which helps us out for Solarization later. But we're just trying to kill the Guardian Dragon before it gets too big, because flyers can also be a problem for Arc. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. Now, the Guardian Dragon, like I said, it's going to bring in a stone to play tapped, which is not a huge deal for us, because then Robert's only going to be able to recover one stone anyway. And it's actually kind of nice for us, because now next turn we're going to be able to call 3 stones into play by calling stone. And so that'll be helpful. We see a Persephone pitched here to kind of get around the cascade. It's going to put Chivalry's Tears back in our hand, which we say that's fine. Thankfully, we do have another fire card here. We're going to go ahead and still pitch the Chivalry's Tears to get the dragon out of the way. Now, we don't have a ton of cards in hand at this point, which is a problem, but well, we did get to at least get the body off board. He still has the other stone. I think we forgot to resolve that he should have the other stone. Nope, we just, both of us completely forgot to resolve that he gets the free stone enter. So that's a mistake from both of us. Gonna go ahead and tuck back the Replicant Scarlet to play a Replicant Genshi Tenshon. This is gonna make us a will coin. The will coin doesn't super matter. It's mainly there to help Genshi Tenshon turn into a card draw piece. This token cannot swing the same turn because it just came into play. Putting a stone back to play, a couple stones back to play Replicant Scarlet, also a very good card, being able to apply stat negs to the board, as well as draw us additional cards and fuel replication, solarization more. Duty, that's third stone, reminding that only one of them recovers. So Robert will have access to 2 stones here. No longer has the will coin to work with. Looking at Replicant Scarlet, she's not very big, and we don't control any sun protection entities, so she's only ever going to be this base 2, which is fine. It's mainly that consistency piece of the fact that the deck runs out of cards very quickly, and so with Replicant Imul, you can kind of pseudo refill your hand by burning all your stones before recovery. To use her ability, and then going in from there. We see a second Guardian Dragon come down. It's already big enough. It's not going to survive a Chivalry's Tears. Stone comes into play, and there's a 4C. This is good for us, though, because now we're going to get to be able to call 4 stones, which feels really solid. So we'll get the satellite, which will then get us another stone, and then we can call 4 more stones. So we're going to have a lot of resources during our next turn. Gear Satellite comes into play, choosing not to use that stone before recovery for Imul for any reason. Calling stone to match the 4 stones from Robert. We see another 2 satellites, which is pretty nice here, getting close to, like, this is, again, the longer the game goes and the more satellites they have, the more overall progressive value Ark's just going to keep generating for free every single turn. So you can't let the fight go on too long against Ark, or it will just drown you in the advantage. So we're going to attempt to swing in for 6. We do have a will coin, so this will be 1,000 damage. Robert says, that's fine, I'll take it. Then we swing in for 2. Takes that as well. And at this point in time, we're at a really good spot to be able to start casting stuff, but we're going to wait one more turn, mainly to just have Imul set us up for being able to play even more cards next turn, potentially, or set up stat negs. We're not particularly worried from one swing from a Guardia Dragon. And again, as you've seen before, against the control deck, keeping them at only 2 will every turn because of the Grail Gears is a really big part of how Ark, handles these control matchups. Only 2 will to work with is not a lot when you're staring down as much will as Ark has at this point. Swings in. We say that is fine. We will take the full damage from that Guardian Dragon. We see a Starving Beast come down here. Now, one thing we could do here would be to apply a neg4 onto the board in response to the enter effect so that you can it would destroy Brad and destroy the Starving Beast, but we're not particularly concerned by the Starving Beast right now, so we're just going to let it be big. And then if Robert does decide to Judgment again here, that works out great for us because at that point in time, Robert's fully tapped out. Like, Robert has to make a decision now in terms of whether we're going to have 3 will. He wants to have 3 will during his next turn or just 1. And even then, you're staring down a pretty aggressive board state, especially since there's about to be 3 more tokens onto the field and even more stones to work with. So crack and sack all 3 of those stones. Hit the 4th satellite. Four stones left, so I could call to match. Call stone to match, but it works out actually better for me to try to bait out some things from Robert to tuck a few things back so that calling stone actually gets me the most value possible. So swinging in for 6 will become 10, probably going to apply a neg4 here with the eyeball so it turns into a trade. Now I can call 5 stones to match the 5 stones that Robert has and leave myself with 0 stones left in the stone deck. Thinking about swinging in with the tokens for 2. Still sitting on Cascade here, haven't needed to use it yet. We're going to go ahead and get those last 5 stones. Total of 14 will to be able to use. Put a couple cards back for Solarization. And at that point in time, with however many resources we have, and knowing there's this neg4, we're going to go ahead and slam this Replicant Odin. Whole idea is just to nuke all the stones, and because there's that neg4 on the board, the Guardian Dragon will immediately die. Thinking we're pretty safe because of the Cascade. We do see a Persephone come down to put it back in my hand, but that is okay because we have enough cards in the RFG that all we need to do is banish a token and hit any, light or wind or darkness card, which we have plenty of them in the deck, and that potentially lets us solarize the Odin again. We do see a Replicant Kaguya off the top, so the Persephone is back in the Odin's back in our hand, and at that point in time, we're just going to pay the Solarization plus the 3, and we're going to nuke the stones anyway, playing through the interaction and leaving the control deck with 0 resources and staring down a pretty lethal board at that point. Odin comes back down. It's going to destroy all the stones. There's nothing to stop it this time. That's the crazy thing about Replicant Odin is like stuff like Conflict is just not going to stop it. You'd have to, Sword of Progression is something that we can play around with Cascade. Like we have a lot of ways to be able to play into the control mirror in a way that's pretty effective. It's just a matter of finding the Odins to be able to nuke the board. Nothing really that Robert's going to be able to do here, being fully tapped out, so we're going to lose all the stones. That's probably going to be the end of this game. It's just a matter of scoop it up and seeing what the top deck is for the next turn, especially because next turn Replicant Odin will just be able to swing twice because we have enough cards in hand. Well, we'll have enough cards in hand to be able to swing twice. So leaving Robert with just one stone here, can't even flip. Now no longer on seal. Like that's the biggest thing here too, is that like because we didn't immediately read Judgment, we couldn't have been there's a world where Robert should have re-judgmented based on the hand if the hand had number 13s in it, but the problem there is again the Cascade, which is like what Arc wants to do in the opening turns. Is like you set up these Cascades early on and then you protect it any kind of fights that you're doing in main phase to slam things like Odin. So Robert does scoop it up and we move into game 2. So now that you've seen kind of how one of the ways that in the control matchup Arc finishes things off, we're going to see what happens if things will be a little bit differently this time, or if Robert can get a little bit more of the seal engine online. Guardian Dragon in general just feels like a card that you don't really want to be playing against Arc because it benefits from you having more stones. So especially since there's the Grail down there, I just feel like I would honestly feel like mulliganing away more of the Grails or more of the Guardian Dragons and just playing heavier into the control package, making it so that like whenever whenever Arc tries to make a play, Brad's there to punish it and then do some minor follow-up on the following turn. The problem there is, again, if I hit a lot of satellites, you're going to start seeing a lot of tokens, and then you start getting drowned by, 200 damage over and over again is not great. You do eventually just die. There we see that Guardian Dragon again. Seems like an interesting play. I just don't know if I would agree with it here. And then we'll pass the turn there. Getting another satellite crystal. Calling stone to match the 2 stones. So like this is what I'm saying. It's like normally I would have only been able to get 1 stone there, but now I have 3 will to work with. I get another guy. I can swing in, I can banish, I can set up for a lot of cool things. Swinging for 2. Robert says that's fine. 200 damage is nothing. Banish the top 2 cards. RG them. Hit a Cascade and a Kaguya. Gonna tuck a stone back to play the Cascade, which gets us a Replicant Scarlet, which we will then tuck that back in to play that Genshi Tenshon, because that guy is a card that if Arc can get him down quickly, it generates a lot of value here. It can't swing this turn, but it has the barrier. It just serves as this kind of consistent generating value threat. And if you have multiple on the field, it's just gross. You just get to generate, more than 1 extra cards every single turn. You get to have them suddenly be swinging in for 14. You just get to put a lot of pressure. Arc is a deck that like kind of feels a little bit like every type of deck other than aggro. Like it's not an aggro deck, it's not a burn deck, but it can serve a very aggressive strategy. You can play to a mid-range. It can play to a cool combo with Odin. It can play to a control with Kaguya. It can play to board control with Nyarlathotep. It can do a lot of neat things. You can even play the long game against decks like Typhon because you're playing things like Dante, which is kind of nuts. The Replicant package is a very cool way to kind of synergistically play into what Arc is trying to do. So we swing in with the Guardian Dragon. We say that is fine. We're going to take that damage. No big deal. There's a world where this is that moment, like I said before, where Robert could just hold priority, like just choose not to do anything. But ultimately, and with that Cascade on the field, I would think that might honestly be the better line, is just to not do anything here rather than going down to just 1 resource. Because at this point in time, next turn it's going to be 3 resources total, but maximum 2 resources if I do anything during my turn, which I'm probably going to do, whereas Robert could. So Robert has like 1 point of potential interaction here, but you have to play through Cascade, right? That's the whole point of Cascade, is it forces you to have multiple points of interaction to be able to stop play lines. And I will get 3 stones from Calling Stone, and I hit another satellite off of the satellite. So we're very quickly like snowballing into just drowning Robert in card advantage. There's even a world here where we could just be very greedy and play Odin twice. If we have like stuff to be able to generate. I have the tokens here. I can even burn something with coin. We're going to use the will coin to play Replicant Scarlet. We're going to go ahead and swing in 10 at the Guardian Dragon, which is enough to kill it. Do not mind losing the Scarlet. We mainly just wanted to burn the will coin so that our reminding about the 2 tokens. So if we could play a second Genshi Tenshon. And we want to get another will coin there. So now get a second will coin if this resolves, but he can't be canceled because we use solarization. So there's not really going to be anything Robert can do about that. We could see a Lorite come down to stop the enter effect potentially. But if we don't, then Robert's going to be taking 2,400 or 1,400 damage here, and at the end of the turn we're going to draw 2 extra cards. Like, that's just a lot of value to generate. Get that will coin, swing in for 14, take Robert down to 24, and then draw 2 extra cards because of the 2 Genshis, and then pass. just this progressive value generation at this point in time. Like, we can kind of just sit. Like, we are threatening lethal next turn. That's the thing too, is these 2 Genshis are also just threatening lethal next turn, on top of the tokens that are coming down. And so Robert has to find a way to deal with this wide board. The problem is Brad's easiest ways to deal with wide boards are when we get to seal 10. And which is also one of the reasons why we're slamming these Genshis and just leaving the tokens up this time, because we're trying to rush down Brad before it can get to seal 10 and put us down at like Mysteries of Gruus Ballista and make us banish everything and everything like that. Targeted removal with Mysteries of Zero also doesn't help here because Replicant Genshi Tenshon has barrier, so you just can't hit it. Seeing what, so this is one of the things about Arc, like I said, like we can rush things down, and Grail, this is a good showcasing of like why Grail is good. I will say though that the fact that Arc just get to choose whether to have Grail or not is relevant. I played against some more aggressive decks where I just said, you know what, Grail's not worth it. I need the extra card in hand, especially when you see that your hand post mulligan is like, the fact that you can do a post mulligan is the best part, because you can choose, like if your hand is full of the Brad spells like Light Curtain or Conflict, you can just choose not to grab the Arc so that you have more ways to be able to play through it. And it feels a lot better, especially against more aggressive decks, to just know that you have the cards to be able to make a couple plays and do something with the Conflict or the Light Curtain or the Chivalry's Tears, which is what this deck is using. It's using specifically those 3 Brad spells. Light Curtain is very good against aggressive decks, especially decks that are playing the duo resonators. Light Curtain is very good there because you remove all of their abilities and then kill them, which means they don't get their triggers when they leave the field. And I've seen a lot of our decks, especially more of our aggressive decks at our locals, like being very aggressive with those duo resonators. So there's some pretty solid value to be played from there. So we do have all 4 satellites here. So there's a world where we're going to try and see if we can Judgment Arc just to have it be a little bit funny. We would need the safest play line here, honestly, would be if we could like slam an Odin, destroy all the stones, and then Judgment Arc. I've done that before as like a lethal threat where you just go, you have 0 stones, I have a 7,000 Arc. Call a stone and answer it. And it usually doesn't work. But we don't have an Odin right now. So right now we're just going to swing in with the Genshis, see if we can get some more resources out of Robert before we go any further. Down comes a Pharesia, Lady at Ataractia. Which seems fine. This is going to try to give barrier. Oh, it gave barrier to the wolf. And then is going to block the Genshi, which we're fine with. We're swinging in for 14, which is going to trade. So strong, interesting play there by Robert just to try to minimize some damage. We're going to go ahead and go in for 2,000. If we banished all the tokens and we had an Odin right now, it would be the play. I think there actually might be an Odin in hand, but we're just going to go ahead and perform Judgment. Seeing if there's any follow-up we want to do here. Oh, nope. We're going to go ahead and before we do anything, flash in, just go ahead and put in a Replicant Kaguya so we can use those stones up, and then we're going to perform Judgment. This is designed to help be able to protect our play lines here. Judge Arc's going to come down. He is, with 14 stones in the deck, he is a 7,000, and is going to be threatening a lethal swing. I do something very stupid here, which is like count my stones by piling them in reverse order. I shouldn't do that because I'm not supposed to shuffle the stones. You're supposed to put the 4 satellites on the bottom of the deck. The reason why is because you don't want to create the situation where your opponent calls a stone, like taps an entity and you get Arc Grail, and then or you get into play the satellite and then can immediately tap sack it and like kind of use it twice. So that's why you put them on the bottom of the deck in a random order instead of shuffling. You'll catch me fix that here in a little bit. So keep that in mind, is that when you do Judgment Arc, you put the stones, the satellites on the bottom of the deck. So just be mindful of that. We draw a card off against Tenshon. We tell Robert he gets to recover 1 stone and call a second one. And we say, you have 2 stones to be able to answer my arc before it swings in for 4,000 and even or 7,000. And even beyond that, the damage that's on board is probably enough to kill you. The tokens in the Genshi Tenshon also represent 2,000 damage. And there's Kaguya, who will be able to cancel automatic triggers. There's just all kinds of stuff going on here. Really just putting Robert on a 1-turn clock, similarly to how we would by playing an Odin. It's just truly backbreaking when you go play Odin and Judgment Arc in the same turn. Usually there's just absolutely no coming back from that, regardless of the deck. Rests the 2 entities, which is going to get me 2 stones, and RFG 2 cards. And this is me reading the judgment and realizing I shouldn't have these satellite crystals. So this is where we fixed it. But every single time an entity gets rested, showing that I have those 2 stones, that they should actually be on the bottom. And then those two stones come into play. That RFG's the top 2 cards of my deck. Because those stones have entered the play. We get another stone with dragon, but honestly the dragon's not going to do anything. It's just going to serve as a blocker. And so that will be the game as we go into combat on my turn. So beginning of the recovery phase, those 2 stones go away. We're going to tap to remove the top 2 cards of our deck beforehand. Hitting more cards to be able to play through with Kaguya or any kind of other interaction here. And then we just start going to combat. Swinging in with Genshi. Deal 1,000. Swinging with the tokens. Robert's thinking about whether to block any of them. And then just for fun with walking through, we're like, Robert, block one of the tokens. I guess I had light total wrong in the moment, so I actually didn't think that the replicants and the tokens were enough for lethal. But we swing in with the Kaguya. We say die with Arc just for fun to swing for 7,000 damage, and that is the game. The Arc deck profile will be up soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.